Khushboo Rawlley from US Impact, and we are here currently in Sheriff Jim Skinner's office, and it's an honor and pleasure equally to actually be here with him. He was first elected in 2016, and he's coming up for re-election in 2020. And he has been part of so many amazing organizations, and he has done so much already. I would like to list a few things for our viewers. Basically, Collin County Sheriff's Office is comprised of 550 personnel that provide law enforcement services. And Jim is 27-year law enforcement veteran, trial attorney, and former prosecutor. He is an armed forces veteran, having served over 7 years as a U.S. Air Force Security Police Dog Handler Investigator, EST, SWAT team operator in Southeast Asia, Middle East, and New Mexico. He's a former member of Board of Directors for North Texas Crime Commission and serves on Commission's Law Enforcement Training Committees as its legislative committee. Jim is a member of National Sheriff's Association, where he serves as a member of Public Affairs Committee. He also serves on the Board of Directors for Sheriff's Association of Texas. And he also serves on Board of Directors for the Child Advocacy Center for Collin County as a trustee for Collin County Meals on Wheels. In 2007, he became an assistant district attorney and special prosecutor for the Collin County Criminal District Attorney's Office. Technically, he has been part of tons of more things, and it will take me like literally 10 more minutes to just explain all of that. So thank you so much for actually giving us your time and giving us US Impact team, this time and talking to us. We would first of all like to know your experience since 2016. As to what were your focus areas, what are the things that are close to your heart and your concerns, and once re-elected in 2020, what would be your priorities?
Okay. Well, thank you, Kush. I appreciate the kind introduction. I am Collin County's 39th sheriff. We actually patrol over 500 square miles of territory in Collin County, and we maintain a jail that has approximately 1,100 inmates on a daily basis in custody. I think before I go any farther, what I should do, though, first is to thank you for the opportunity to serve as your Collin County Sheriff. It is a distinct pleasure and privilege to get up every day and to come down here and to lead the brave men and women of the Collin County Sheriff's Office. These are selfless individuals who sacrifice much, them and their families, in order to be public service servants and to provide in a way that we have safe communities here in Collin County. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to serve as your sheriff. I was elected in the general election of 2016, and my term began on the 1st of January of 2017. The men and women of the Collin County Sheriff's Office and I have set about on a journey in order to begin new procedures and processes with the county with an aim towards keeping up with the absolute incredible population explosion that we're experiencing here in Collin County. One of the first things that I did when I became the sheriff was I set about enacting a plan for a patrol reorganization plan. In my opinion, it was not sufficient to have only 4 people on duty covering 500 square miles at any time of the night or day. So we set about immediately asking the Collin County Commissioner's Court for additional patrol officer positions. We began to hire people and to send them to the academy and to train them and to get them ready to serve. So we now have a patrol force where at any time, night or day, we have 13 deputies serving in our 5 patrol districts across Collin County. We also have canines. We have canine officers that have their dogs, patrol drug detector dogs, that are on duty. And our dogs are on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week through the use of a number of different dogs. As part of the patrol reorganization plan, of course, we want to emphasize that it's the response time that we're concerned about. We needed to be able to take that 20 to 25 minute response time and break that down and to close that gap and to put us closer to the 10-minute mark. We've certainly accomplished that. On priority calls, where citizens who call 911 and need help immediately, we're able to respond typically in less than 10 minutes. Some of the other things that we've done in this term, my first term as sheriff, one of these is very dear and near to my heart, and this is the protection of children. As we know, online solicitation of minors by those who prey upon children is a very serious problem. And we're not immune from that here in Collin County. No matter where you live in the United States, there are people who will use modern technology and social media and other means by which to prey upon children. We want to do everything that we can to try to mitigate that as much as possible here in Collin County. So one of the things that I've done is I created a child exploitation unit. This is a unit comprised of 3 deputy sheriffs who are specially trained to go online, to pose in an undercover role, and to use their techniques in order to root out these people and identify these people who are purveyors of child pornography and those who transmit and trade child pornography, and of course certainly those that are in the production of child pornography. We're also looking for those people that are involved in the online solicitation of minors for sexual purposes. If you're a parent and your child has a telephone or access to social media, I believe that you should do everything within your power to absolutely know what your children are doing on their cell phones. What we find is that when our deputies work undercover, posing as a 10-year-old to a 14-year-old online, these people will try to break down the defenses of a child and to work towards talking them into meeting them in some secluded spot. And of course, when that happens, then these children are sexually assaulted. So we're very aggressive here in Collin County. We've had a number of different operations over the past year, in which we've worked with a number of other different law enforcement agencies to run these undercover operations. We've made over 100 arrests of individuals that we've charged for online solicitation of a minor or possession of child pornography. As I sit here at the recording of this video today, by the time you see this, you will also be aware that recently we announced the conclusion of Operation Athena, in which over 20 individuals were arrested for this type of conduct, and there's up to 10 to 15 additional individuals that may be arrested in the future. One of the other things that we've done during my first term is I'm working with 7 other sheriffs across North Texas, and we created the North Texas Criminal Interdiction Unit. This is a unit, a specially trained unit, that's designed specifically for deputies working the open highways in and around the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, in which we're looking for people who are smuggling illicit narcotics and dangerous drugs and human trafficking. We've been very successful since we implemented this program in December of 2017. We've seized thousands of pounds of illegal narcotics, many dozens of weapons and prohibited weapons. We've recovered over 100 stolen motor vehicles. But more importantly than anything, is that we've recovered 3 missing children during the course of these operations. This is something that we expect that will continue. The sheriffs here work together. This is something that you'll never see on the news every night. Our policies are that when we make these large seizures of contraband, we don't discuss that in a public fashion, only because it helps to confuse the criminals who smuggle these drugs into the United States.
Those are great topics, and you've actually caught the people during this time. That itself shows about the success and talks itself about the success that you have had while implementing whatever you are, and then it has worked successfully. On those lines, I would like to ask regarding your article which was featured related to 2 catch 3 thieves. It basically talks about those men that who stole over 58 million from the senior citizens throughout United States, not only just US but Canada as well, by illegal telemarketing practices. I mean, even that, something like this to track them down involves great amount of skill and tactics and strategies. And I think you are kind of a guru to implement those things in whichever area that you pursue. So we'd like to talk more about that particular project.
Well, it's been a long time since I've heard about the Reader's Digest article, To Catch Three Thieves. It was an article that I was featured on in Reader's Digest regarding an investigation that I, sort of landed in the middle of. There was an elderly woman that lived in Clovis, New Mexico, who had been defrauded out of tens of thousands of dollars by illegal telemarketers, and then they threatened her on the phone. I put a recorder on her phone, and it was unbelievable the type of language and the things that were said that we captured in these recordings. As a result of that, we opened an investigation, identified these people. We became involved in a case where we didn't know at the time, but the FBI had a massive undercover operation going against these same individuals out in California. So we intersected their case without knowing it. At the end of the day, we ended up working together on the case, and we've become fast friends. These agents from back in those days now are very close personal friends of mine, and it's amazing how all of this has happened. But those individuals, when they became aware of the fact that we were after them, they fled. They fled the United States. They had a lot of resources at their disposal. And I set about working with a number of different law enforcement agencies and Interpol. And we ultimately tracked these individuals down. And we caught them when they re-entered the United States using fictitious names in Virginia. And so that was just a great example of law enforcement working together. And this is a job that's never done by people working alone. You have to depend on others, and we have to depend on our citizens to help us do this important work.
I do have a follow-up question from your first answer, your thoughts on the Cannabis Bill.
Okay.
Because, as you mentioned, drugs and narcotics, slowly it is becoming an issue again, and parents are concerned about it. So, well, yeah, those are little quantities as what they're trying to say, but then I would like to know, once it's out there, it's easy to overdose and things like that.
Okay.
So, how would you?
Well, that's a great question. I am the chairman of the Legislative Committee for the Sheriff's Association of Texas, and I currently sit on the board of directors. During the legislative session in Austin this past spring, I appeared with the chiefs of police, the Chiefs of Police Association, and chiefs and sheriffs from across the state, and I made comments on behalf of the sheriffs of Texas. And I explained to them that the sheriffs of Texas were opposed to any decriminalization of marijuana and the lowering of any penalties related to the possession of marijuana. And we say that because as sheriffs, we get to see firsthand when people are brought into our jail, on many occasions, suffering from THC-induced psychosis, where they've ingested marijuana that has a THC content so high that it has extremely negative effects on them and causes them to have all types of bizarre conduct, which results in them being arrested. There's nothing that can be said by anyone, in our opinion, after seeing what's happened in Colorado and the state of Washington, and the huge problem and mess that they've had, that the legalization of marijuana would be a good thing for the state of Texas. I disagree with those that would say that would be the case.
Again, I would move on to one more such published article in the Prosecutor magazine, which is basically talking about violating the public's trust. 18-month grand jury investigation and 2 months of trial in the complex corruption prosecution of long-time North Texas Criminal District Attorney. Would you like to elaborate that one? Because it is local and it took a long time, and I'm sure it's quite a fight back then. So.
Well, right. That was that article was written by myself and 2 other prosecutors after a very lengthy public corruption investigation When I was a prosecutor for Judge John Roach, who is the district attorney here in Collin County, he assigned me to work on this case as a special prosecutor. This involved the district attorney in Rockwall County, a man by the name of Galen Ray Sumrow. There were a number of allegations that were made regarding the theft of government funds and the misappropriation of funds from what they call the check fee fund. And it was alleged that that this district attorney was taking those items and using it for his own personal gain. I worked the case for about 18 months with the Texas Rangers and the FBI, and ultimately myself and another prosecutor ended up trying the case on a change of venue in Dallas. There were two separate cases. Each trial lasted approximately a month. The result of the trials, of course, resulted in a sentence of 15 years in the state penitentiary for this former district attorney, who at one point was known as the prosecutor of the year. So I was proud of all the assistance and work that everyone gave us in that case. Again, this is just another clear example of it's never one person doing a job. It takes that team effort. It takes people working together to bring these cases to a successful conclusion.
Thank you so much. And also being a sheriff and trying to control all the kind of violence over here. And of course, you're already involved in children's and trying to detect if, how's their mindset and stuff like that through online media and otherwise. So what is your take on the gun law? Because all of this, narcotics and all of that is so related that if you just have it in your hand, it's just a second away. The incident is just a few seconds away. So I just wanted to know your thoughts on something like that and how best such situations can be managed.
Right. Well, I'm a constitutionally elected sheriff, and I am a big believer in the Second Amendment. I personally believe, based on my observations as a peace officer since 1978, that we live in safer communities when people are properly trained and choose to carry a firearm concealed. We know statistically that we have a lower incident of violent crime compared to other parts in the United States, and I think that's large part due to the fact that criminals know that citizens are armed here in Texas. And I am one of those people, again, that if you've taken the time to learn how to use a firearm and you've properly trained and you've complied with the law and you've been issued a license and you carry one concealed in a responsible way, I think that we're all safer because of it.
That's a good point. Criminals are staying away just because they know that guns are here. So technically they help in protection also. Well, next I would like to ask, you already have tremendous experience of working in this area and the issues that we face. And Collin is becoming more and more popular. There are people coming from all over, and there's growth. It comes with its own challenges and issues. So how do you see next few years in terms of growth? And what issues do you think is Collin County currently facing? And how would you plan to basically fix and handle them?
These are great questions. So really, when you talk about what my plans are for my second term, most of that is going to center around dealing with the massive population growth that we're experiencing. Because when we talk about managing transportation and the ability for law enforcement to be able to quickly respond to where you're calling for help and us getting there, we talk about population from the standpoint that we have in the county these MUDs and SUDs, the municipal utility district and the special utility districts, that are popping up everywhere. Okay, and in some cases there may be 4,000 roofs pop up here and 2,000 roofs pop up in another place, and all of these things are going to draw people and families. And unfortunately, part of that will be need for law enforcement services. So the challenge for us at the Collin County Sheriff's Office is going to be to keep pace with the presence of law enforcement and to make sure that we have the adequate services to provide to our citizens here in Collin County. The other issue that population, an increase in population brings, of course, is what we're currently experiencing now. and that is the population in the jail has reached its capacity. We currently keep over 1,100 inmates in the Collin County Jail, and we're in a position where I have begun to ship inmates to other counties here in Texas to house them. The Collin County Commissioners Court has set about making the plans and putting their steps in order to build us a new cluster. A new cluster will be an area that will have 4 different pods that can house 72 people each. So this won't come online for another 3 years. So we're going to have to manage that, and it's going to take a combination of working with the sheriff's office, with the courts, with the district attorney, and the criminal justice system at large to try to keep that population to a point where we can manage by, on misdemeanor cases, if a person is qualified for bond and these types of things, instead of keeping them locked up, to turn them back out so they can go do their jobs, and then of course answer to the courts for what they've been arrested for. And in the case of felonies, of course, there are sometimes that people come to jail, they can't make bond, or they're a flight risk or a danger to society, and we don't want those people to be out, so they have to be confined here. But this is a very complicated issue when we talk about housing inmates into the future and growing in a responsible way that we're responsible to the taxpayer and taking that blend of recognizing our responsibility as law enforcement officers and keeping people housed on the one hand, and then doing it in a financially responsible way where we're never being irresponsible to the taxpayers that we serve.
On that note, I think you've mentioned on your website and a couple of the places, that we don't have enough mental health facilities, especially for inmates, and all of them have gone through trauma. Of course, they have stories, they have reasons to do whatever they have done, but we have our role to play because we have to manage the society. But after a while, they are not as bad as dangerous as criminals, but they do have, mental issues, which again could be dangerous for society. You never know. So how do you think can that be solved, and what can be done? Would it be federal, public, private, or NGOs, or what can be done on that front so that that particular problem can be fixed, that they can go out and maybe, if they're ready, maybe it's good that if they add to society, pay taxes, and be independent on their own.
Well, your question drives right to the heart of the matter. I mean, this is one of the biggest issues that 254 sheriffs in Texas constantly talk about. I'll leave this weekend for the annual Sheriff's Association of Texas Conference in San Antonio, and one of the most important issues that we'll talk about will be mental health and providing those services, and of course, how that affects the population in our county jails. One of the biggest problems right now in Texas, of course, is there's not enough resources to care for the mentally ill. Too often, many times, these people end up where the county jail serves as that warehouse, if you will, or that service provider for people that are suffering in mental crisis. This has to change, and we've said it repeatedly. We've talked to our legislators about this. This should be priority number one. We want to continue to urge the legislature and the governor to work together to try to come to resolutions that will ease the population in our jails of people suffering from mental crisis. It's incumbent upon all of us. I mean, and society is better off, of course, if we're able to treat these people in a meaningful way and return them to society as productive citizens. Jail is not always the answer, but too often jail is the answer because there's no other place for these people to go. And I think that that's a shame.
So regarding protecting the citizens' rights and sheriff's role in that particular aspect, it's a huge issue. It's a wide topic, but would you like to talk in general about that?
Well, I think when this issue comes up from the standpoint of a sheriff, we, as I mentioned before, we're constitutionally elected officers. We understand and recognize that our bosses are you, the citizens, and that we work for you. Unlike a municipal chief of police who reports to many times to a city manager and a mayor and a city council and all these different bureaucrats, if you will, between him and the citizens. A sheriff works directly for the citizens and for the people. And so there's a lot of emphasis given by sheriffs across the United States on ensuring that our God-given constitutional rights are respected and protected and appreciated. We concentrate on doing those things that provide those rights for everyone.
So after so much experience and knowing and working on so many causes, I think it will be good for people to know what is there in future. What are we doing, this department doing for the safety, and what kind of things are being implemented? Is anything new they would like to share, which is futuristic? And I think we would love to know that, your plans.
Well, okay, great. I'm glad you asked that question. That's one that I get excited about.
You're all about future. Yes, here we go.
So it's really important to understand, we recognize what a force multiplier that technology brings us in law enforcement. And I mean, it's everything from facial recognition to automatic license plate readers to drones. And one of the things that I recognize and my staff recognizes and that we want to do as we move forward into the future is have a robust drone program. We recognize that how we can provide so much better service. If we have the ability to launch a vehicle in the air that has a thermal imaging scope, for example, we're called many times about missing children or elderly people who've wandered away from their home, who may be suffering from dementia and can't find their way home. And when we respond to these types of incidents, it would be so cost-saving and efficient for us to be able to launch a drone into the air that has the proper type of thermal imaging and cameras that we could quickly assess the situation and determine whether or not someone was in distress and locate them. The other thing too, of course, is in certain situations involving the call-outs for us to respond to certain violent incidences, it makes a lot of sense to launch a drone and fly a drone in to assess the situation before sending a live human being into that situation first. So we recognize this. We recognize that the technology is absolutely amazing, and we want to take advantage of it. The other thing is software. We're going to be a beta site for software where a company is perfecting a three-dimensional training simulator for officers to put the 3D goggles on and to go into a real-world situation that's all three-dimensional. One example might be like a simulated attack on a school from an active shooter. It allows the officers to face this up front and we can work with them and judge their decision-making process and these types of things, and that's all done in an automated way. So technology is great. The other thing, of course, is I'm a big believer between the private and public sector partnerships. I will tell you that we have our canines, but we have no place for them to live. Currently, our dogs live in a crate in the garages of handlers who have these dogs. And one of the things that I would like to do in the future is to work with others and to reach out and see if we can work together to come together in a way that we could ultimately build a kennels here at the sheriff's office for our dogs to live in. It would provide much better security for them, and we'd all have a lot better peace of mind knowing that these brave canine deputies are well taken care of and have a safe place to live.
Great future plans and all valuable and will add to your safety and security. So Jim is a God-fearing man for sure, and he and his family goes to St. Jude's Catholic Church in Allen. He volunteers his time as a crew chief on a privately owned Vietnam-era U.S. Army UH-1H Huey helicopter that is used to fly missions in support of our wounded warriors and other veteran-related activities across North Texas. Would you like to talk about that?
Sure. Listen, I'll have to tell you that it's one of the highlights of my life, and it's something that I'm so privileged to be able to do. But I am part of a crew of a privately owned Huey helicopter that was in Vietnam from 1969 to 72. It's now owned in private hands. A friend of mine owns the helicopter, and a group of friends get together and we operate that helicopter as a crew. And we do fly to different events across North Texas that are related to veterans. We do work with the wounded military members who often come up from San Antonio, and we'll fly them with us in these different events and do different things. It's always an honor. It's exciting to do. I love to be able to contribute, to give back in some little way, to recognize the heroism and sacrifice that so many young men and women have done as they fight to ensure that we can live free in our way of life here in the United States.
Him and his wife Ellen have a son, Egan, who is also kind of pursuing kind of similar interests and is 2003 graduate of U.S. Military Academy at West Point. Thank you so much for all that you and your family do for the community. And I would highly suggest all the viewers of this particular video and from the members of USAPAC to actually go out and vote and know your candidates well and understand the importance of security. Again, thank you so much for giving us your time, and we will provide all the details in the link below. And yeah, exercise your right to go out and vote in 2020. Thank you.
Well, listen, thank you for coming by and giving me the opportunity to visit with you today. I am standing for re-election as the Collin County Sheriff in 2020. The primary is in March. I'm running as a Republican in the primary in March of 2020. And should I be successful, I'll stand for election as your sheriff in a second term in the general election in 2020. This is the same time, this is the same cycle that the presidential election takes place. I want to thank you again for giving me the opportunity to serve as your sheriff, and I encourage you, please go out and vote. I'd like to be given the opportunity to continue serving as your sheriff. Thank you.